And today, we're looking at something really quite fascinating. It's a re-edition of a book, flagged by one of you, called Kalush the Accident, Counter-Investigation.
Right, by Antoine Casaubonneau and Jean Dupucet.
That's the one. Originally published back in 2006, but now it's out as an expanded English ebook, which makes it way more accessible.
Coluche. I mean, what a figure in France. Comedian, actor, activist. He ran for president, didn't he? Sort of provocatively.
He absolutely did. A massive cultural icon. So when he died in that motorcycle crash in '86, it was huge.
Yeah.
Just this outpouring of national grief.
And like often happens, questions started popping up. Conspiracy theories, maybe?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
The circumstances felt unclear to some. And this book, The Counter-Investigation, it dives right into those questions. It's not just speculation, though. It's presented as a serious re-examination.
And this new version, the ebook, what's special about that?
Well, the big thing is it includes the original audio interviews, the ones the authors, particularly Dupucet, conducted back then.
Ah, okay. So you actually get to hear the witnesses.
You do. It's the foundation of their whole investigation. So our aim today is, to unpack the main arguments of this counter-investigation. Why does this story still have legs? Why the questions?
Especially for anyone listening who, sometimes questions the official version of events. This is a classic case study, really.
It is a very compelling one.
Okay, let's start with the basics. What was the story everyone sort of remembers? The official line on the accident.
Right. The widely held memory, I guess, is Kalush on his bike, going pretty fast.
Yeah, speeding.
Supposedly speeding, yeah, on a small winding road near Cannes, down south. And the narrative is that this truck was maneuvering ahead of him.
Like pulling out or turning?
Something like that, maneuvering. Yeah. And it cuts him off unexpectedly as he comes around a bend. Basically, no time to react because of the speed and the curve.
Okay, tragic accident, high speed, unforeseen obstacle. Seems plausible on the surface.
That's the picture, yeah. But the book, it really challenges that.
How so? What does the counter-investigation present?
Well, based on witness statements, and the authors argue these statements weren't properly looked into at the time, they paint a totally different scene.
Okay.
They claim Kalush wasn't actually speeding, maybe doing around 60 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
Which is about 37 miles per hour. Not exactly racing.
Right. That's quite moderate.
And crucially, they say the road wasn't winding right there. It was straight.
Straight, not a blind curve.
A straight stretch of road. And the truck, it wasn't maneuvering ahead of him. It was apparently coming from the opposite direction.
Well, opposite. Okay, that's completely different.
And moving really slowly, like walking pace slow. And then, according to these witness accounts in the book, the truck makes this sudden left turn right into Kalush's path.
Wow. So not Kalush speeding into a truck, but a slow truck turning directly in front of him on a straight road.
That's the core claim of the counter-investigation, yeah. It completely inverts the dynamics of the accident.
That is a massive difference. So what pushed the authors, Dupucet and Casaubonneau, to dig into this so deeply, especially years later?
Well, for Jean Dupucet, it was very personal. He was a journalist, had some connection to the milieu around Pierre Goldman, who Casaubonneau also wrote about, actually.
Okay.
But Dupucet, he apparently went to the accident scene the very day it happened, started asking questions, talking to people right then and there.
Really? On day one?
Yeah. And his investigation apparently got a major push from what he called an involuntary confidence.
An involuntary confidence? From who?
From someone described as a former figure in the milieu, the underworld.
Ah, so like someone maybe hinted that it wasn't just an accident?
That's the strong implication. Something made Dupucet believe right from the start or very early on that there was foul play involved. It wasn't just random chance. This confidence seemed to set him on a path for years.
Okay, that definitely adds a layer of intrigue. And Antoine Casaubonneau, his co-author.
Casaubonneau was also a journalist. Back when they were working on the original book, he teamed up with Dupucet. But interestingly, his career path changed later.
Oh.
Yeah, he actually became a lawyer, works at the Paris Tribunal now, and apparently represents victims of terrorism, among others.
Huh. So a background in journalism and now law, focusing on victims. You can see a thread there, maybe. A pursuit of truth, of justice.
Definitely seems plausible, yeah.
Huh.
It suggests a certain mindset, perhaps, that drew him to the Kalush case.
Right. So these two, driven by different things maybe, but both digging for answers.
Yeah.
What are the key pieces of evidence or arguments they present in the book? This new edition highlights some things.
Yeah, the big one, as we said, is the inclusion of those audio interviews Dupucet did.
Who did he speak to?
Well, The ones mentioned specifically are Didier Laverne and Ludovic Paris.
Yeah.
And they're crucial because
They were there.
they were on the other motorcycle, riding right behind Kalush, eyewitnesses in the truest sense.
Okay, their testimony would be absolutely central.
Absolutely. Hearing their account of what happened, second by second, from just feet away, that's powerful stuff. The book also mentions interviews with Jean-Marie Marion and two others named only as Sebastian X and Gerard X.
Sebastian X, wasn't there something about a crazy story connected to him?
Yes, that's mentioned. Apparently, Sebastian X told Dupuis some wild story. Something about a file, preparations for an attack. It's vague, but it clearly struck Dupuis as significant.
An attack linked to Kalush.
That seems to be the implication, or at least what Dupuis took from it. It definitely fueled his belief that this was more than just a tragic accident. It pushed the investigation towards, well, conspiracy territory, frankly.
Okay, so witness accounts from guys right behind him, plus this mysterious story about a potential attack file. What else does the book delve into?
It seems quite thorough. There's a section mentioned called AFP News, just saying they analyzed the very first media reports, how the story was initially framed.
Which is always important, how that first narrative gets set.
Exactly. And then there are these sketches. Sketches made on the basis of the statements of Didier Laverne and confirmed by him back in 2006.
So, visual reconstructions based on what the key witness said he saw.
Precisely. Trying to map out the scene, the positions, the movements, directly from the eyewitness account. That could offer a very different visual understanding than, say, official diagrams, if they differ.
Yeah, that could be really clarifying. Or damning, depending on what it shows.
The book also seems to examine the official side. It mentions sections on the accident process, Mrs. SBM's report, presumably some kind of expert report, and the sentence, meaning the legal outcome of the case.
So they're looking at the police work, the legal findings.
It seems like a critique of the official investigation and its conclusions. And the index mentions names like Serge the Armenian and Gerard Desmarais. We don't know the context from just the outline, but their inclusion suggests they might be relevant figures in the counter-narrative.
Right, potentially other players or sources of information.
And ultimately, the book keeps coming back to those fundamental questions. Why did this happen the way it did? And who, if anyone, was responsible beyond just the truck driver? It's asking why and who.
It's not just pointing fingers, it's trying to build a case for motive and means, essentially. Okay, so why reissue it now? In English, with the audio, Casaubon talks about this in his new preface.
He does, and it's quite interesting. He says a big motivation was seeing the original French edition being sold for like crazy high prices online, hundreds of euros.
Wow, for a used book?
Yeah, and he felt that was just wrong, especially for a book about Kalush, who was, all about the common person fighting for the poor with the Restos du Cœur. The idea that fans couldn't afford a book about him, that bothered Casaubon.
That makes sense. Kind of ironic.
Totally. He even says he photocopied his own last copy years ago and put scans online for free, just so people could access it.
That's quite a commitment to the subject and the audience.
It really shows something, doesn't it? He also admits he was hesitant initially to do a formal reissue. Felt like he'd sort of moved on from that part of his life.
But something changed his mind.
It seems it was the publisher, Fabrizio De Gennaro, who was persistent. And crucially, the idea of doing it as an ebook, which finally made it practical to include Dupuis' original audio interviews.
The technology caught up, in a way.
Exactly. Casaubon saw the value in letting people hear those primary sources directly. He also notes they've added some new footnotes in this edition, making corrections or clarifications, so it's updated too.
So the format allowed for this richer experience, sharing the core evidence.
Precisely, sharing Dupuis' original fieldwork in a way that wasn't possible before.
And Casaubon adds a rather poignant note at the end of that preface, right? About the truck driver.
Yes, it's quite striking. He mentions that just as they were finalizing the preface, he and Jean Dupuis' daughter, they learned that the truck driver involved in the accident had recently passed away.
Oh.
And Casaubon reflects on that, saying the driver, Albert Artisan, took his truth with him to the grave. It adds this layer of finality. Some things maybe we'll just never know for certain from his perspective.
Yeah, that closes one door, but leaves the larger questions hanging, in a way. It really underscores the lingering mystery.
It does. And it brings us back to Jean Dupuis himself. His dedication seems absolutely central to this whole story.
It really sounds like it was his driving passion for years.
Immense commitment, yeah. Fueled by that early involuntary confidence, whatever it was, and then years spent investigating, interviewing, trying to piece together what he believed really happened.
And tragically, he didn't live to see the original publication.
No, he passed away from brain cancer in March 2006. The book came out just after that.
Yeah.
So this reissue, especially with his audio interviews now included, it feels like a real testament to his work.
A way to ensure his investigation, his voice, and the voices he recorded continue to be heard.
Exactly. It's not just a reprint. It's bringing his investigation to life in a new way.
So, pulling it all together, what's the main takeaway here?
I think the core takeaway is that this book, Kalush the Accident, Counterinvestigation, presents a really serious, detailed challenge to the official story of his death.
Based on eyewitnesses who were right there.
Based on those close eyewitnesses, analysis of the scene, and this underlying suggestion of potential foul play that drove Duplessis' years of work. It raises significant questions.
And this new ebook with the actual audio, that's a game changer, potentially. It lets you, the listener, well, the reader in this case, engage directly with that primary evidence, hear the witnesses' voices, their pauses, their certainty or uncertainty.
It offers a much deeper, more immediate connection to the investigation. You're not just reading about the interviews, you can actually listen to parts of them. It allows for a more personal evaluation of the evidence.
Yeah, you can listen and try to form your own judgment based on the raw material.
It definitely brings you closer to the heart of the counterinvestigation. And it leaves us with a pretty big thought, doesn't it?
Which is,
well, when someone so incredibly famous and loved, like Kalush, dies unexpectedly, and these kinds of persistent questions and detailed counterinvestigations arise, what does it really tell us about how official narratives are formed, how memory works, how difficult it can be to establish a definitive truth that everyone accepts, especially when emotions run so high?
yeah, it makes you think about the gap that can exist between an official account and public doubt or alternative theories, and why that gap persists.
Exactly. So consider this deep dive just a starting point. The book itself, with those interviews, offers a much deeper engagement with the evidence. Now you can explore it, weigh the arguments, and decide for yourself what you make of this enduring mystery surrounding Kalush's death.